It keeps getting better for the San Antonio Spurs. After nailing the NBA draft, they go into free agency and they pick up a big in Luke Kornet that is going to do wonders for the front court. They now have an opportunity to add upon that with Chris Boucher being available, and we are going to discuss why this would be great for the San Antonio Spurs here on Spurs Digest with your host, Keenan Warner. And if you guys haven't yet, make sure you guys take a spur of the moment to get every Spurs moment so you don't miss all the free content we've got coming from Josh, me, and Brian. That subscribe button down there, it is free, and I believe it's still 70% of you guys who haven't hit that button yet. So just go ahead, hit that button. It's one little click. Spur of the moment, every Spurs moment. Right there. But anyways, let's get right into it. The Raptors just gifted the Spurs the perfect big to propel them into the playoffs. I think the Spurs are already ready for a playoff run this year, but this would only enhance the roster that we have. The Raptors just signed former big Mamu to be the backup center. They just gave Jakob Poeltl a deal, so they did not have the money to sign Chris Boucher. The undrafted big man out of Oregon who has spent the last years in Toronto. Let's just look at him for a second for the guys who don't know. 10 points, 4.5 rebounds a game. The thing that you really want to key in with him is 36.3% from the three-point arc. He can actually shoot the thing, and he can shoot it well. He is 6'9", but he does have long arms. He has a good frame to him. Good frame in the sense of not strength, but a good frame in the sense of length and athleticism. So he could be somebody who could come in there and do big things. He obviously was a part of that 2019 Raptors championship roster, though he didn't do much on that roster. He was still a part of that roster. Can the Spurs make the team? Can he be on the Spurs team? They were rumored to be in the market to pair a front court addition this summer. We obviously saw what they did with Luke Kornet, and we couldn't be more excited about that. They got a true 7'2" big who can rebound, who can defend. We're going to touch on that later in this episode here, but this would give the Spurs a different element. This would give the Spurs a little something extra, and that is what we're going to need, and we'll break it down here. We could use another stretch big. So we needed big man depth, and that's what we got in Luke Kornet. But obviously, Luke Kornet is a 10 and in kind of guy. He is not going to be the guy stretching the floor. And Jeremy Sochan, we know, we've been seeing him work on that three-point shot over the summer, but we don't know how it's going to translate into NBA games until we see it translate into NBA games. So we really only have Victor Wembanyama and I guess Harrison Barnes, if you want to count him as a big, even though he's 6'8", but he can play a power forward, who can give you a pick-and-pop game. This would allow for somebody else who is in the big realm to give you a pick-and-pop game. And the thing about it is, you can play him alongside of Wemby, play him alongside of Kornet. Depending on the lineup, you could even put him at a 5. I probably wouldn't because he doesn't have the frame structure for it. But, I mean, if you're playing a Draymond Green-led Golden State Warriors team that doesn't have a 5 in, really, unless it is Draymond, you could do something along those lines. Or if someone goes small, maybe a Naz Reid at center. Naz Reid could do something in the post, but he's more of an outside kind of guy. So players like that, he could actually defend at a decently high level. Yet the Spurs have a pathway to just signing a player at a bargain. Only 2 players with at least 800 minutes last season that averaged at least 20 points, 9 rebounds, and 2.5 threes per 36. One was Chris Boucher, the other was Victor Wembanyama. What's that saying there? He can rebound, he can score, he can shoot as a big. That would be a beautiful addition to this San Antonio Spurs. He is not going to command a significant salary. Obviously, we talked about Naz Reid on this 5-year $127. That's a lot of money. We just signed Luke Kornet for a 4-year, $41 million deal. On his last deal, Chris Boucher was a 3-year, $35-ish million deal. So roughly around the $12 million a year. I think you'd be able to get him for anywhere between 12 to 15. And with the salary cap going up to 10% that it does, that contract in a year or two wouldn't even look as massive as it should. The thing about these contracts now is you're going to have to adjust your eyes to these contracts. It was the same way when the NFL quarterback market just skyrocketed. And you're like, oh, wow, these guys are getting paid buku dollars. And you're like, okay, but then you just start to adjust to it. So you just got to get your mind to adjust that role players are going to command $10 million on the market. So putting 15, 16 million, though that would have been a starter level good player in the back in the day, that's probably going to be a role player today. And unfortunately, it's how you have to be, and that's just how the market is. But at the same time, it's not going to cap strap us the way that a $15 to $16 million deal, if that was the case, would do there. He's 32, someone you don't want to build the future around, just had his second best season. I think that Chris Boucher could come into this roster and could be very, very pivotal. You'd be able to have true 2-5 lineups. Like, you'd be able to set a first wave and a second wave. You don't do it that way, of course, but you'd be able to send out a first and a second wave when you had, say, Wemby. You'd have Wemby, Sochan. If you go Barnes, then you can go... you probably have Dylan Harper off the bench to start the season, then Stephon Castle and De'Aaron Fox, and then you could go Dylan Harper, Devin Vassell, Chris Boucher, Luke Kornet, Julian Champagnie, and really just go in. I didn't even mention Keldon Johnson's name, so you could go in with waves. If you were to get a signing like this, he comes in, he can stretch the floor. You don't lose shooting at the big, especially when Wemby comes off the floor now, and that would be a huge addition. Let me know what you guys think about Chris Boucher down there in the comments. But there's one thing I want to talk about real quick before I let you guys go, and that is this here. NBA free agency, the winners and losers. I want to just highlight again how important this winners and losers we have been, and it's been big man depth, and I continue to talk about big man depth with Chris Boucher here because it's so important. We saw last year, obviously having a bunch of wings is truly important, but for us last year, not having true great depth after Wemby got injured, even before I went out with the Rosas, but even before that, the games where he would miss, we just felt so light in the front. We just felt it was just hard to deal with a lot of the other teams in the league, especially when a lot of them have big men who can play, who can stretch the floor, who can get down in the paint. Having these guys now are going to give Wemby time where if he does need to take a couple games off, we're not thinking to ourselves, man, we can't get a win. We now have the offensive prowess to go get the buckets to make up for Wemby for a night or two, and then now we're going to have the defensive prowess to go do that as well. But big man depth, of course, we got Luke Kornet. Obviously, the Rockets signed Capel. We don't care about that portion. The Spurs picked up Luke Kornet even after they had Victor Wembanyama. And the loser of all of that, this is the winners and losers for it, was opponents trying to score inside on the San Antonio Spurs. Here is a telling statistic about one of the big men does. 166 players, shout out to Genius IQ, have defended at least 300 shot attempts within 5 feet over the past 2 seasons. Among that group, Kornet, 52.2%, ranks 5th, and Wemby, 52.3%, ranks 6th, and lowest field goal percentage. What that is basically saying is this. Hey guys, you're not going to score on the inside of the paint. Because you have to think, Luke Kornet was running lineups where he was the big. It wasn't really Luke Kornet, now Horford all that often. I'd have to check the numbers on that, but I don't believe it was all that often. I mean, they had Tatum, who was a bigger guy. And then Wemby, of course, we know Wemby wasn't running with bigs all day and night. You can go Wemby and Luke Kornet minutes because Wemby can go guard on the outside legitimately, and that's going to change things. That is going to change things. And with what offseason, the one thing I want to mention too here before we get out of here real quick. The one thing too with this Luke Kornet thing, we see what Denver's doing. Denver just got Cam Johnson. They've gone out and they've made moves. They've made championship level moves. They obviously have the best player in the world. His name's Nikola Jokic. How are you going to defend Nikola Jokic? Wemby does a good job on Jokic, but Jokic has just got such a big body to him. You can now throw Kornet on him and have Wemby roam? Have the best shot blocker, the best defender in the league roam? Yeah. That Luke Kornet signing has made things all fall in place. It was a small thing that basically makes everything fall in place. It's like when you get a number 2 receiver in the NFL, and then you had your number 3 playing your number 2, your number 2 playing your number 3, and everything just gets to fall in line. We saw when the Warriors got Jimmy Butler last year. Podziemski could play his real role. Gary Payton II could play his real role. Now we've got Luke Kornet, so now people defensively can play their real role. Now Jeremy Sochan, instead of having to be a big real stopper, he can be the versatile defender that his body and he is. Instead of Wemby having to really guard a big, which he clearly can do, he now can roam and do the thing that he does better than anybody in the league. But before I go on anymore, let me know again what you guys think about Luke Kornet. I know we did multiple videos on Luke Kornet. I want to know what you guys are still thinking about this. The more you've thought about it, the more you've sat on it. And Chris Boucher, I want you guys to tell me about it. I want you guys to let me know what you guys think. Again, this has been Spurs Digest with your host, Keenan Warner. I appreciate all of you guys, and I'll be seeing you guys very soon.